all of a sudden, I was confronted with the most risky and most difficult choice of my life, and one that I couldn't even imagine.
Welcome to Zestful Aging, the podcast where we celebrate aging with vibrance and we defy the stereotypes of what it means to age. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, a psychotherapist of more than 30 years, here to introduce you to my off-the-mainstream guests who will energize and inspire you. My hope is to create optimism about getting older and help you cultivate zest and joy in this season of your life. And I love to hear feedback from you, my listeners. Please drop me a line at zestfulaging@gmail.com. I read every single comment. And to find out more about this podcast, hop on over to zestfulaging.com. Imagine having everything you could ever want. The American dream on steroids. The house with the ocean view, 2 successful, loving sons, a kind husband, and a satisfying career, and also education with super pedigree. But still something wasn't quite right for our guest today. There was a longing that just would not go away. Today's guest tells the story of how she sacrificed everything to be true to herself. Suzette Mullen is the author of the new memoir, The Only Way Through Is Out, which is the story of her coming out at midlife. I can't wait to talk to you about this, Suzette. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited about our conversation.
And this is the second time you've been on the show. We were just talking off mic how the first time we met was pre-pandemic, which seems like decades ago. And since then, you've written this memoir. And I want to talk about the courage that it must have taken for you to leave behind what many people would call an idyllic life.
Yeah. Your choices, your choices don't come in a vacuum. And what I discovered as I was writing my memoir, because of course I was digging into the past, is that I had this pattern of a life of safe choices, which I really hadn't been aware of. But part of the job of the memoir writer is to dig into the past and connect the dots. And so I had this pattern of a life of making safe choices, and all of a sudden, I was confronted with the most risky and most difficult choice of my life, and one that I couldn't even imagine. And so I was not someone who was, sort of like I was very risk averse. And so finding the courage to leave behind what was a very good life and step into a completely unknown future, A, it was terrifying, and B, it didn't happen quickly or all at once. And in fact, the memoir really recounts my wrestling with, both internally, was this the right thing to do? If it was the right thing to do, did I have the capacity to even do it? Was it fair to the other people in my life? And so courage, I love how Brene Brown, I think she talks about courage and bravery, and it's not about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway. And I think that what happened, how I found the courage, frankly, after a lot of wrestling, a lot of, looking to other people to give me the answer. And of course, nobody else could give me the answer. I had to find the answer inside myself. And once I found the answer, then I had to actually take action on that answer. And I mean, there were so many stops and starts because, it was literally, we've all, I think, heard of the image of creeping up to the edge of a cliff and looking over, right? And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what this felt like for me. I kept creeping up and getting so I could see the edge. And it's like, once you jump off, there's no return. And, I finally, this is recounted in the book, but I finally had a moment where things clarified for me, and I knew inside myself that I wasn't willing to go to my grave without knowing fully who I was. And there really was, so that was the choice. Am I going to continue living this safe, comfortable, and by all appearances, very good life, but that a life that I knew wasn't fully authentic for me? Or was I going to jump into an unknown future and discover who I really was? And at the end of the day, I just couldn't live another day without knowing who I fully was.
So let me ask you a question as a therapist, if you'll just permit me for a minute, because I'm so interested in the mind-body, interaction.
Mm.
What did it feel like in your body as you were experiencing this longing, and also knowing that it would blow your life up? And you had real concerns about your husband and how he would, the consequences for him, the emotional consequences, and also concerns for your sons. What what was it like to be in your body when you were wrestling with this choice?
Mm. Wow, such a good question. The body, the body mind connection is so powerful, and you'll the readers will see as they read the memoir that there are moments in my story where, my body was really, really speaking to me, where I knew at some really deep level that either something big was about to happen. I didn't know what it was, or, the body doesn't lie for sure.
Mhm.
What, yeah, I mean, the longing, was for intimacy with a woman, and it what did it feel like as I was wrestling? I mean, all kinds of emotions. So, let's get real. Sexuality at midlife. I don't know about many of your guests, but I grew up in a time where we didn't talk about our sexuality.
Mhm.
I had all these feelings inside that I hadn't really shared with anyone else. And I didn't know, were they normal? Quote, I'm using air quotes, were they
Mm.
normal? Did other
Mhm.
people feel this way? Was I going to, quote unquote, blow up my life for sex that I didn't even know was going to be all that great? Because so there was a whole thing inside my
Jeez.
body of knowing, on the one hand, what was true, but then my mind would say, yeah, but you don't really, maybe this is all in your mind, maybe this isn't
Ah,
really real.
like
So there was,
fantasy.
yeah, exactly. So there was a whole, battle going on inside me about how could I trust what I was really feeling? Was this really true? Because, as the readers will discover as they read the book, I had not had an intimate experience with a woman, uh, to, as evidence that I was, really gay or not, or what was this thing. And so I was really having to rely on both what I was feeling inside and could I trust that?
The longing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aha, that's so interesting. So you didn't have like data. You were just like, this feels really strong and true. Should I act on it?
Well, yeah, yes and no. So what I've come to understand on the other side of this, and I have been part of many later in life support groups over the years, and so these same questions keep coming up over and over again. Is that some of us, especially in the early stages, feel like, well, we have to actually test this out to see, you know, I need to go out and I need to actually be with a woman to know if I'm really gay or not. And there's
Okay.
there's there's a whole, and I felt that way because I was like, who leaves a life like this for a life they've only been living in their head? That just feels really irresponsible. And as a responsible first child, that was just like not the thing to do. And so I really did want to have some more concrete evidence. But my, there, you'll read in the book, that was not possible
Mhm.
within my experience. But the data, what I have come to believe and discover in my own experience is that you don't literally need to have an actual, sexual encounter with another human being. And in my case would have been with a woman to know what you're attracted to and who and what you're attracted to. And so there actually was plenty of data there too, but it was data that I had over the years chosen to ignore or deny
Aha.
and all of those things. So does that answer your question?
It does. It does answer my question. Hi, Zestful Agers. Did you know that we have enormous control over how we age? What we do every day sets us up for the kind of longevity and health span we'll be enjoying for our future. If you'd like the blueprint on how to live better, longer, I have created a course that cuts right through all of the contradictory and sometimes harmful advice and is built on science and the more than 350 interviews I've done with experts in the field of aging. You can find my Zestful Aging course at zestfulaging.com under the Courses tab. Get ready to feel more energetic, vibrant, and joyful. Now, back to the show. One thing that I'm curious about is, and you mentioned this to me off mic, is how this memoir is really serving two different audiences. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how it might be of interest to somewhat distinct groups?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm also a book coach. So some of the language that I use is coming out of my experience being a book coach and working with writers. But one of the things that we talk about is your ideal reader. When you're writing any book, who is your ideal reader? That means who is your primary audience for your book? And sometimes there will be two primary audiences or two ideal readers. And that was very much the case for my book, The Only Way Through Is Out. All along, I knew that, a very precise, distinct audience would be women who were wrestling with their sexuality or coming out later in life. That would be the most sort of bullseye, precise audience. And, within that LGBTQ plus space, not just women, but, non-binary people, men, all genders, all flavors, people who were in the LGBTQ plus community.
Mm-hmm.
And either, coming out later in life or not. And I have kind of just a quick anecdote. The assistant editor from the University of Wisconsin Press, who is my publisher, is a queer woman, a millennial queer woman. And she expressed to me how much my story meant to her as a younger queer, her as a younger queer woman reading a story of an older queer woman who had a happy ending. And so
Mm-hmm.
the sort of, queer community, women coming out later in life was one audience. But all along, I had another ideal reader in mind. And actually, I had a specific person that I was always keeping front and center as I was writing my book. And that would be a woman at midlife, regardless of her sexuality, but somebody who was kind of taking stock of their life at midlife. Maybe they were a recent empty nester, or there was some reason that they were in transition or shifting, and there was something they were longing for more. They were living on the
Mm-hmm.
outside, a lovely life. There wasn't any turmoil on the outside, but on the inside there was, and there was all those questions. Is this it? Is there something more for me?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there was a specific longing that, had nothing to do with sexuality, but had something to do with a new career, or, maybe wanting to leave a relationship that they were in, or, moving to just doing something different. But
Mm-hmm.
the
And
idea,
scary.
and scary. Yeah. And really, really scary. And so all along, I've also had that reader front and center. And a lot of the people who are early readers of my book and who have helped me along the way to get to a published book were not queer women, or, people in the LGBTQ plus community, but they were women at midlife. And this idea of stepping into a new beginning, or stepping more authentically into your life at midlife, really struck a chord with them. And I hope it will
Mhm.
strike a chord with those readers.
Yeah, well, that's sort of the title. I mean, that's the whole Zestful Aging is the engaging and being really present for your life and making choices based on what's important. And that's like the ultimate Zestful Aging is saying, yeah, this is completely frightening, and some people are not going to agree with it, and there might be some collateral damage here, but I really have to do it because I don't want to be at the end of my life and have these profound regrets.
Well, and I know you've probably heard this, and your audience probably has also, but it has come back to me when they've done studies and surveys on people who are, in their last stages of life, hospice patients, and the number one regret is not living your life
Mm,
authentically. That is
mhm,
literally the number one regret of people. And there's a scene in the book. I don't want to give away everything, but there's a
mhm,
scene in the book with a family member, let's just say, where I'm kind of straddling. I'm peering over the cliff. I haven't completely jumped yet, but I'm beginning the process of sharing what's going on inside me with important people in my life.
mhm,
And there's a family member who says, you know, if you had told me this, or if you had done this, years ago when you were in your, 20s or 30s, I wouldn't have any problem with it. But basically, although this person didn't say it directly, basically they were saying, you're too old to do this. Like, it's too
Mhm.
late. And
Mhm.
I absolutely had those fears myself going forward. I mean, when this was all unfolding, I was in my mid 50s, and that's a pretty I had a pretty established life. I had a
Mhm.
nearly 30-year marriage that I was, it was a 30-year marriage. And I had been with my then husband for since I was 22 years old. And I mean, that was my whole adult life. And
Mhm.
there was, I did ask myself, is it too late? Is it too late?
Mhm.
Um, and that, coming back to that moment I shared earlier, that I just was like, well, it's not going to get any easier to do this, I mean, if I'm going to wait another 5 years, it's not going to get any easier. And I knew at a certain level, that longing isn't going to go away. And you then have to really decide, I mean, another choice that people can make, and I never would tell somebody this was the wrong choice for them, is to make peace with it, to acknowledge the feelings, the longings, whatever they are, and choose to
Mhm.
stay in your life, but to make peace,
Mhm.
to make peace with it. And that is an absolutely valid choice. And there were many moments that I wished that I could do that. But for me, I ultimately could not do that. And I wasn't willing to spend the rest of my life, with this longing that was
Pretending. Yeah.
getting more and more painful, and not really being
Mhm.
able to be fully engaged in my own life. And it really wasn't fair to me, or to my husband, or to anyone really that I was in relationship with.
When you think about yourself now as a fully out woman in a relationship, and I know that you live in Pennsylvania, you have
Mhm.
your dog, your new life, you're very involved in the LGBTQ plus community. Some of your photos are with you with the flag, and
Mhm.
flying your flag with a total big smile on your face. And you think about yourself then. I mean, are there other things that you notice that have changed besides, obviously, you're living this different kind of life, but what are the other consequences? And that's not a great. What else has bloomed? Maybe we could say.
Yeah.
What do you notice about yourself that is in the fresh air and out and breathing all its authenticity? I'm curious.
Well, literally everything is different. And
Mm.
and so one of the big ahas for me, and perhaps this is obvious, but I didn't connect the dots until I was actually living it, is that when you are living authentically in one part of your life, it spills over into all
Mhm.
parts of your
That's
life.
that's what
And
I was trying to get to, and
yeah,
you're
and
much more articulate,
yeah.
yes.
And the converse, I think it's the converse, is true. When you're not living authentically in one part of your life, it
Mhm.
spills over into the other parts of your life. So part of my story, and I do discuss this somewhat in The Only Way Through Is Out, was that I did struggle with my professional identity and my professional life before. I was a lawyer. I did all kinds of really wonderful things objectively, but on the inside, I was really searching for what was the work I was meant to do on this earth. And I didn't really feel like I had landed on it. And that was a big, big struggle in my life. And so coming out and, leaving behind the old life and stepping into this new life was both a personal transformation, but it's also turned into a professional transformation. I had been doing some editing work, and at the time I wouldn't call it book coaching because I didn't really know what book coaching was, but after I came out and I was single and I was living in a new city where I knew exactly one person when I first landed there, I really went full on into my career as a book coach and as a writer. And what is different is that I finally am comfortable in my own skin, and it spills over into everything. It has absolutely spilled over into my professional life. I work at, I'm recording this right now. I'm in a little podcast studio in a co-working space that I go to most days, which happens to be across the street from where I live, which is super convenient. And
Mm.
every day I pack up a little lunch and I walk
Oh my
across the street
gosh.
and I work all day with words, with writers, with my own words. And then I pack up at the end of the day and I walk across the street and so, I feel so happy and so grounded and
It's so
so like,
congruent. It's
yes, it's
so congruent. It's all Suzette all the way through.
exactly. Everything is finally aligned. And I was talking about longing. I mean,
Mm.
that was frankly the much bigger longing. I mean, I had this particular longing about, intimacy with a woman and sexuality and all of that. And that was very important, obviously, in my story. But the bigger longing was I felt like I was somehow not living my life. I was missing my life and I didn't know how to get there. And I was longing for alignment is the perfect word. I was longing for alignment in all aspects of my life. And I'm finally there. And I'm evidence that it is never too late. It is never too late.
That's beautiful. Do you bring your dog next door as well?
I do some days. So my wife and I we kind of trade off taking care of
Mm-hmm.
our little dogs. So on the days that that my wife goes into her workplace, I'm in charge of the dog, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I can bring her over here, but often her name is Lucy, my dog, and Lucy is a little diva, and she likes people. She's not a big fan of other dogs, especially in the beginning. So I pick my moments to bring her over here because sometimes it's a little more stressful than it's worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're both fans of rescue dogs. I remember that from
Yes.
last time. So your story is so inspiring for all of us, whatever our sexuality is. Um, this is the time to make those choices. And, this awareness that, wow, I have more years behind me than I do in front of me. And this party's going to be over at some point. And what I decide now is going to have such a massive effect on how I live out the rest of my years on earth. So oh, wow. It's been so fun talking to you, Suzette. And I'm so happy for your successes and all of the goodness that's even happened since we first talked before the pandemic. Can you tell people how to reach out to you and learn more about what you do?
Absolutely. So my website is
Mm-hmm.
yourstoryfinder.com, and that's where you can find everything there. You can find out how to purchase the book. Of course, it's available. The Only Way Through Is Out is available at all major booksellers, but I've got some insider tips and some awesome freebies on my website for readers and writers. And so yourstoryfinder.com is the website. I'm most active on Instagram as far as social media. And my Instagram handle is, it's a weird spelling because somebody else took Your Story Finder, which is really annoying. But
yes,
so
understand.
so it's you are Story Finder.
Okay.
Is and I love to engage with people on Instagram. So those are the two. But for all the info and the details on the book and really more on my story, and if there's any writers out there that are interested in finding out more about working with a book coach, yourstoryfinder.com is definitely the place has all the info about all the things.
All the good stuff.
Yes.
Great. Well, Suzette, thank you so much for spending time with me today. It was just delightful hearing your story. I highly recommend the book to everyone, and more good stuff for you to come. Clearly, you are on an upswing and living in your congruence, and it's been really fun to talk to you today.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share it with some of your friends. Our theme song is All I Did Was Wait for You by Kjartan Abel. Visit Kjartan-Abel, that's KJARTAN-Abel, ABEL.com to hear more of Kjartan's work. And our technical director is Stephen Litweiler. And stay tuned next week for another interview with a fascinating and inspiring guest. See you then.